Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Perfectly Imperfect podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Minnie, and thank you so much for being here. If this is your first episode, welcome. So glad you're here. And if you are a longtime listener, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your support. Today, I want to talk about my recovery from my eating disorder. And I know I haven't done like a designated episode on this kind of topic in a little bit, honestly. I think I would say around a year. But I really feel called to talk about it because this month, earlier in January, I reached my 5 years in my own recovery from my eating disorder on January 11th, 2026. And I mentioned it briefly in my last episode, and I just wanted to dedicate some time to talk through some benefits that I've experienced in the last 5 years of consistently choosing recovery every single day, pushing back against that anxious, disordered voice in my head, and really challenging myself and proving to myself that I'm capable of completely changing my mindsets, completely changing my life, completely changing my relationship with my body and food, and that it really is possible despite what our brains might tell us. So I just wanted to talk through some reasons that I continually choose recovery every single day, and hopefully this could serve as encouragement for you if you are earlier in your recovery journey or contemplating recovering or just feeling in not a good spot and really struggling with disordered eating or any type of eating disorder. I hope this finds you and makes you feel heard, seen, and loved because you are not alone, and it's not an easy thing to go through at all. Yeah, I hope this helps, and I'm sending so much love. I just want to preface as well that this is coming from a perspective of my personal experience with my recovery. Every single recovery journey is completely different. It is such an individual experience. So things that I'm experiencing from my recovery and benefits that I'm feeling may be different to benefits that you are feeling or you will feel. And also depending on the type of eating disorder that you have. There are so many different types of eating disorder. Personally, I was diagnosed with anorexia and came from a background of very restrictive eating. A big push for my recovery was gaining weight, eating more consistently, and just really healing my relationship with food and transforming my mindset around food and what it does for me. So I guess that's just to put it into perspective. I'm aware that there's so many different types of eating disorders, and people will experience such a range of benefits and experiences throughout their own recovery journey. These points are just coming from my personal experience, so I just want you to keep that in mind. I also wanted to quickly mention that I know I started this podcast very much talking about recovery a lot, and I started this podcast at a time where I was very much in the thick of my recovery. I was kind of more fresh into my recovery and just used this space to try to figure out things, try to connect with people dealing with similar experiences, and just like figure out how I was feeling about a lot of things. And just verbalizing it has been so therapeutic for me. And on the plus side of being able to build a community and connect with so many of you listening has just been an incredible experience out of this podcast. But yeah, I wanted to just dedicate this episode to this topic. I know it's not something I talk about all the time, but I know that that's very intentional of me because as I've gone through recovery, and I guess an overarching huge benefit of recovery is that it opens up more in your life for you to lean into other interests and truly discover that there is so much more to you than your eating disorder, than your recovery journey. And there's just so many more interesting things and exciting things to identify with and interact with and engage with and learn and experience and just soak up. And I know that has been a huge part of my journey. And especially since I've been very open about my mental health journey and my recovery on social media, on the internet, it's been difficult for me at times to recognize that I'm moving away from identifying with my recovery, which is a positive thing, and that's the purpose of recovery. But I also feel like in some ways I need to hold on to that part of me, because that part of me created content that so many people found and connected with and loved and followed. And so it's been a very interesting journey over, I would say, the last later few years of just really trying to recognize one, my relationship with my recovery and how I'm doing and making sure that I'm good there and on the trajectory that I want of healing my relationship with my body and food. But in additional, there's just been this navigation of my relationship with social media and how I share and what I talk about and what I identify with. And I don't know, I feel like that's definitely still something I'm figuring out, but I know that I don't want to only talk about recovery because there's so many incredible things in my life that I find so much more exciting now. I'm in a place where I can do that and I can dive deeper into other topics and have other interests and have just the mental and physical capacity to engage with other things because of my recovery journey. I don't know, I feel like I'm touching on all my points already and jumping ahead a little bit here, but yeah, I just wanted to say that and share that and again, express my appreciation for you all. And I just want to consistently be open and authentic and honest with myself and all of you that this is an ongoing journey and it's meant to change over time. Recovery is, personally, I believe, a lifelong journey. Someone asked me the other day, do you consider yourself recovered? And to them, I said, I don't know. I really don't know what the term recovered means, if it's in the sense that you never experience uncomfortable thoughts or disordered thoughts or certain urges and hard, anxious moments, then no, I'm not recovered because I'm still human. My brain is still anxious. I still have anxiety and I still get uncomfortable, disordered thoughts sometimes. But what's different now is I have the tools and the trust in myself and the past 5 years of life experience under my belt to not engage with those thoughts and know for certain that that is not who I am and that is not who I want to be. And those are not the type of actions that I want to take in my life. And that's just not how I want to take care of myself and my body. So yeah, I don't know if I am recovered or whatever that means. I believe it's subjective to each person. I think each person in their own recovery journey can define that term for them or never define that term as well. And you just are just on a journey, which is just life, I guess, at the end of the day. We're all dealing with things. And I know sometimes our brain will want to put it neatly into a package with a label, but sometimes I think the best thing is to not do that and just let it be open and let yourself authentically live and flow. And that's really what I'm trying to do. So, all right, let's get into my 11 reasons to choose recovery. Number 1 is that you can actually feel your body's cues, like when you're thirsty, when you're hungry, when you're tired, when you're angry, and when you're happy. For me personally, when I was deep in my eating disorder and really struggling with that, I kind of lost capacity to feel emotions. I just kind of felt consistently anxious, consistently dysregulated. I just consistently felt kind of numb. So when exciting things happened in my life, I never really felt that excited. And when sad things happened in my life, I never really felt that sad. And that was something when I started recovery, I really wasn't prepared for, was just the influx of the ability to feel my emotions on a much more full range. And I was really taken aback by that at times, how just high I would feel at times and just how incredibly low I would feel at times. And definitely at the beginning of my recovery, as my body was kind of shifting out of the numbed mode and trying to step into more of an authentic feeling of emotions mode, it just kind of swung so far the other way that it felt very all over the place and just super high highs, super low lows. And not to say that I don't feel that now. I think it's normal to feel fluctuating emotions, but I think definitely at the beginning of recovery that shocked me a bit. But now looking back, I'm just so grateful for it. And it's one of the reasons that I remind myself when I'm having hard days or dealing with uncomfortable thoughts, I remind myself, do you want to go back to that place where you feel numb and you don't feel your emotions? And it's really hard to even recognize what you need in each moment. One huge reason to recover for me is to actually feel a full range of emotions and be able to truly listen to my body. The second reason to choose recovery is that your hair and your nails grow so much stronger and so much faster. I remember in the first year or so of my recovery, just noticing how thick my hair became. And I've never had thick hair, so my hair was very thin, really, really thin. My ponytail was so tiny when I was really deep in my eating disorder. And then when I started eating more and I started gaining weight and I started just getting color back into my skin, and I remember getting all these baby hairs around the front and in the back as well. And I was just like, what is going on? But that's just a sign from your physical body that it's reaching back to a happy place of balance and peace. So that was a wonderful sign. And my nails have since gotten a lot stronger as well. My nails would chip all the time. I was just constantly getting my nails done because they looked really bad. And now I haven't had my nails done in months, honestly. But they're just so much stronger, and yeah, it just feels good. Reason number 3 is that traveling and experiencing new situations is actually fun and exciting instead of being incredibly dreadful and anxiety inducing. Because of my eating disorder, I just hated traveling. I hated going places that were new. I hated experiencing new experiences. I hated being in situations that I didn't know the outcome. And to an extent, I'm still an anxious person. So those things are a little bit, I guess, quote unquote scary at times or anxiety inducing at times. And I'm quite type A in the sense that I like to have a plan and know what's going to happen. But it got to the point before I started recovery that I just couldn't handle situations like that. I just couldn't do it. I just broke down. I just had mental breakdowns every 5 minutes because I just couldn't handle that I didn't know what was happening and that I didn't know what food was available or the plan ahead for the day or what the people around me were thinking, and just being in a completely new environment was just so out of my capacity of what I could handle. But as I moved into recovery and started practicing food freedom and really just allowing myself to eat whatever, experience whatever, and trying to let go of the rigid rules that I had around food, around exercise, around lifestyle, I found that I really started to enjoy traveling again and stepping into new experiences. And I felt like a child again because that was something I really loved doing growing up. And I feel so fortunate to have had the opportunity to go on vacations and travel with my family as a kid. And I just fully lost sight of that due to my eating disorder. But then recovery brought that love back for me. And it's a huge reason that I choose recovery every day because, this move to Paris, this could not have happened if I was still the girl I was 5 years ago. I just wouldn't be able to handle it. And yes, I have moments of doubt and moments of fear now for sure. That isn't completely eliminated, but I have so much trust and so much more confidence in myself that I can handle these situations and that I can hold myself and be there for myself through the uncertainties and new experiences that I have. The fourth reason is that food stops controlling your every thought and your every action. This was one that I really struggled to visualize and actually think was possible. I remember for years and even years before my eating disorder really got to its worst and I got to my lowest point, food controlled my life. I was constantly thinking about food, constantly thinking about how much I was eating, observing what others were eating, tracking certain things. It just felt like I didn't know a life without food controlling it. And that was a really scary thought. And even at the beginning of my recovery, that was probably one of the hardest things to really let go. And like I said, I just couldn't visualize a life without having this control and this sort of quote unquote guidance of how to live my life by food. So 5 years into my recovery, I can say that food does not control my life. Yes, I think about food. And when I notice that I'm hungry, I then think about food and think about what food will satiate me in that moment and what sounds good to me. But in between meals and in between moments where I'm not hungry, food rarely comes to my mind. And that right there is something I fully thought was impossible. And I just thought, okay, right, this is just how life is. I'm just going to have to deal with this constant food noise in my head, this constant judgment from myself on what I'm eating and how much I'm eating and when I'm eating. But as I went through recovery and really pushed back against all the rigid rules that I had around food, its grip and its control over my thoughts and my decisions and my actions loosened over time, and basically to the point now where it has completely no control over those things. And I guess I just want to share that because I felt like it was actually impossible, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I can recover, maybe I can gain weight, maybe I can get to a more balanced, quote, healthy place, but I bet I'm still gonna just have to deal with these thoughts. But the thoughts diminish over time, and like I mentioned before, I'm still human and I have hard days, and disordered thoughts still do come and go, but it does not have the grip or the control over my life like it used to. But that came from consistently pushing back, consistently proving it wrong, consistently not giving in to whatever control it wanted to have over my life and my actions. And eventually your brain is like, okay, well, you win. We don't need to control you and grip over your actions anymore because you're doing just fine. The fifth reason is that you actually feel energized after eating food. That's such a basic concept. Like when we think about how we are just animals and we have, these biological systems inside of us that just purely need glucose and they need food to run properly. For me personally, that really helped, actually understanding, well, not to say I fully understand, but learning more about the biology of our bodies and our cells and how nutrition works and how different types of foods help certain parts of our cells and help certain parts of our bodies. My boyfriend studied biochemistry. So honestly, I would just ask him at certain moments where I was really overthinking something about the food I was eating, or just maybe my disordered voice was telling me not to eat something. I would ask him and be like, okay, well, my disordered voice is saying this to me right now, but what does this food actually do for me in my body? And then he would just kind of briefly explain, I guess, how our body needs the food and how it breaks down the food, and that our bodies are wired to know how to handle food and it knows what to do. We in our brain, we can't control what all the cells in our digestive system do. It might like to convince you that it knows what's best for you, but really your body's wired to know what to do with food and it knows how to handle it. I'm actually not going to speak for everyone because I know every body is different unless your doctor has told you otherwise. But for me, in my situation, I feel so grateful to have a healthy working digestive system that, my disordered thoughts were trying to convince me that I knew better and that I knew better than my cells and my digestive system, but actually, I really don't. Anyway, feeling energized after eating food was just a new feeling for me after kind of always feeling drained or exhausted or anxious around meal times and after eating food. So that's a big reason that I continually choose recovery every day, because that's such a good feeling, just feeling yeah, I actually feel better after this meal and this is what I needed, and now I can go on and do the rest of my day until my next meal. The sixth reason to choose recovery is that your body becomes less of an object of which you can manipulate and more of a vessel to just experience and soak up our one beautiful life. This is a big one for me because my eating disorder really stemmed from body dysmorphia and my struggles around body image. I grew up a ballet dancer, and so seeing and feeling this just heal over time has been absolutely incredible. Just seeing that my body is carrying me through all of these incredible experiences, all these new chapters, and it's taken me to all these incredible places and allowed me to hug all the people that I love in my life. And yeah, I just have really been practicing so much gratitude for my physical body, and that has in turn really detached me from the way it looks, and recovery has really enabled me to do that. I kind of mentioned this one at the beginning of the episode, but the 7th reason to choose recovery is that you gain mental capacity to think about other things that interest you or are important to you. When your brain is consumed by what you're eating, what you look like, whatever time of day it is, or whatever else that your disordered brain is latching onto, that is just taking up space from your brain that could be used on learning a new skill, diving into something else, paying attention in class. I don't know. It just really robs you of mental capacity to focus on other things. And so feeling that I now have capacity to pay attention to certain things and dive into topics that really interest me, just engage in different hobbies and activities that I never would have had capacity for 5 years ago, has just been absolutely incredible. And recovery has really enabled me to get here. The 8th reason to recover is that you become a better friend to yourself and to others, and you are just a overall more radiant and magnetic person. When I think of how I felt about myself and just how I felt kind of a lot of the time when I was really deep in my eating disorder, is I just felt like a shell of myself. I knew that I looked like Jenny on the outside and other people perceived me to be Jenny, but I felt like a shell and I felt hollow so much of the time and didn't feel like myself inside ever, and didn't even know who the girl was inside ever. And so a huge part of recovery has been the physical side of gaining weight and showing my body that I will provide it with the nutrients that it needs and that it doesn't need to be in this constant dysregulated fight or flight mode. But it's also the mental side and the sort of self-identity side of rebuilding who I am and who I want to be, and just kind of connecting the outside with the inside. And throughout that process, I've realized that I've built so much more compassion and love for myself. It's still not perfect always, and it will, again, I think, be an ongoing journey. But I'm so much more of a friend to myself, and I support myself, because also through recovery, I've realized that it truly is just me and me for the rest of this life. And it's just you and you for the rest of your life. So if you're struggling to have a relationship with yourself or even know yourself, it's going to be that much harder to build relationships and friendships with others that are foundationally strong and authentic to you. So a big part of my recovery has been just kind of relearning like who I am and how I support myself, and just becoming a friend to myself. And that has in turn strengthened my relationships with other people and my friendships, and just really enabled me to be so much more open and authentic and honest in those relationships. And that is something I would never, ever, ever give up. I feel like I kind of answered point 8 and 9 in the same thing unintentionally, but the 9th reason is that you gain the ability to be honest with yourself, and you create your own authentic perspective on life and what you want in life. So along with being able to become your own best friend and support yourself and love yourself, and also love those around you and support those around you authentically, you start to build your own unique perspective. I feel like with my eating disorder, it was so driven by societal standards or beauty standards, or just always like an external voice coming down onto me. Whereas now I feel like it's starting to flip in the sense that I'm creating my own voice. I'm understanding and strengthening Jenny's voice. And that is now the foundation from which I go about my daily actions and my daily decisions, not from something external coming in, but rather something internal going out. And again, I would never ever give that up, because I feel the most honest and authentic that I think I've ever felt in my entire life right now. And I wouldn't have been able to get here if I hadn't chosen to recover 5 years ago. The 10th reason to choose recovery is that you can actually wear clothes you enjoy wearing. This might be a very personal one, but personally, when I was really struggling with my eating disorder, like I said, a lot of what the disordered thoughts were saying were coming from like external things people had told me throughout my life, throughout my past, society standards, beauty standards. And so I feel like I dressed consistently for that. I dressed with what others will be thinking in mind. And I just felt very disconnected from one, like a sense of style. I feel like I had no sense of style. I mean, she's still evolving and she's always a work in progress, but I just feel like then I definitely had just no sense of style. I didn't know what I truly liked. I just kind of picked things based on what everyone else was doing. And I also found myself like wearing things that I genuinely didn't feel comfortable in or I didn't really like, just for the fact that it was like quote unquote accepted or the quote unquote standard by society or by beauty standards. Now that I've been in recovery and I've been breaking down all these rules and standards and proving to myself that I'm allowed to be uniquely myself and that I don't need to live in accordance to anyone else's life or anyone else's standards, and I don't need to look in accordance to anyone else's standards either. I'm now just like dressing in a way that makes me happy. And yes, sure, I like to wear some trendy things sometimes, but it's coming from a place of I've picked this trend because I like it and I'm going to wear it, not because I feel forced by external influences to dress this way. And it's just so much nicer. I feel so much more comfortable and I just feel so much more confident when I'm going out and walking around. So that's been a big plus, is that I just feel so much more free to develop my own personal style and dress the way that I want. And the 11th reason to choose recovery is that you can truly begin to show yourself love and acceptance and also show understanding and compassion to those struggling. I feel like when I was just starting recovery, I was really wanting to express love and acceptance for myself. But I realized that it has to happen in stages. And speaking from the I perspective, this is how it went for me. I realized that I couldn't expect myself to do everything all at once. I really wanted to just show myself love and show myself more acceptance and just have more compassion and patience for myself. But I was still consumed by food thoughts and, listening to rigid rules around food and my body. And I just came to a realization that I couldn't expect myself to do it all at once. And so for me, just breaking down all of those rigid rules, letting go of the control that I tried to have around food and the control that food had over me, and letting my body gain weight and fluctuate in weight and change and starting to move my body in different ways. And so I just feel like I needed to build up that foundation and actually just get my body to a place of more regulation and safety. And then I could start building the self-love and the self-compassion on top of that and really make that more of a focus. And I've realized that that's the point that I'm at now. I'm just moving my way through my recovery journey, and I feel like I'm at a space right now where I'm continually trying to build a larger sense of safety in my body, but it's not coming from a place of am I eating enough, am I drinking enough, and am I letting my body rest, but it's coming from a place of am I speaking to myself kindly? Am I trusting my intuition? Am I accepting myself for who I am? It just, the questions and the focuses kind of shift over time, and that is normal. And I think at the beginning of recovery, I was really trying to just like do it all at once and was feeling very discouraged when certain things felt very out of reach and felt like I was never going to get there. But I realized that you can't expect yourself to do it all at once, and you just need to take yourself through the stages and kind of go back to basics, get back to the fundamentals of what does your body need to just be in a physical place of safety and be able to feel balanced and regulated, and then you can build on top of that. And on top of that, I feel like I now have so much more compassion and understanding for those who are struggling. And I feel like I just connect with those people because, like I've connected with so many listeners here and other people through social media, once you have this really hard shared experience, it can kind of bond you in a way and just generate this level of compassion and understanding and patience for one another because you have had a similar lived experience. And I think that's so incredible. Of course, I would never wish anyone to experience this kind of thing, but it's the reality that so many people do. And we might as well build community around it and build something special and valuable and something full of love around it, because I would just never wish it upon anyone. But like I said, the reality is that it does happen to so many people and we don't need to feel alone. And I think that's an incredible reason to recover that I consistently remind myself of, is that it's helped me build community and helped me realize that that's something so incredibly valuable to me. So those are my 11 reasons to recover. I feel like there are more for sure, but these are the ones that came to mind when I was thinking about this episode. Before I end this episode, though, I wanted to give some space to answer some of your questions that you guys have asked me about recovery and on this topic. And so I just want to go through some of these quickly. The first question that I have is how to get over food noise. My biggest recommendation for this would be first to identify what subconscious or maybe conscious rules you have around food. For me, food noise stemmed from just having these very rigid rules that I was living by consciously and subconsciously. And because I was living by those rules, I was just consistently telling my brain, I have to live this way. I have to make sure I don't deviate from these rules. And if I do deviate from these rules, that means something bad and horrible is going to happen to me. And I think that's what made this noise in my head, because I was constantly in this anxious place looking out. My brain was constantly on a watch for if anything in my life was going to cause me to divert from being able to live according to these rules. And so that just kind of puts you in this constant fight or flight state, one. And two, it makes that food noise very, very loud and feels like it's uncontrollable and that you can't stop it, because your brain is kind of quote unquote doing what it's supposed to do, aka looking out for danger that's going to harm you. But with an eating disorder, oftentimes it's coming from a place of feeling a lack of control, or, it's not coming from a genuinely healthy place for you. The best way to get over this is to rewire your brain and create new neural pathways for your brain to see that it doesn't actually need to live according to these rigid, strict rules, and that you will be okay and that you will be safe if you don't live that according to those rules. So for me, like I said, that was just literally writing down a list, getting out a pen and paper, writing down what are the rules that I was subconsciously and consciously living by. And, sometimes I wouldn't even recognize them. And then once I just tried to think about them and I was trying to get into the habit of noticing them, I just started noticing them more and more and more. And I would add them to the list. Throughout my recovery, I just really made it a focus to break down every single one of those rules and basically do opposite action. Just do the opposite of what that rule was telling me. Break the rules very intentionally. And by repeatedly doing that and showing my brain, showing my body that, hey, actually nothing happens if I break this rule, it starts to rewire your brain, and your brain stops seeking out ways to protect you, quote unquote, from breaking these rules, because you're intentionally breaking the rules and proving to yourself that you're actually going to be okay. It is very uncomfortable and scary at first because of the way the brain is wired to start to try to quote unquote protect you from breaking the rules. But if you just do it intentionally over time, it will redefine in your brain. And for me, that's what caused the food noise to quiet. Another question I got asked is how to recover while living alone. A big part of me starting recovery was actually moving out and starting to live alone. Personally, I was living at home with my family when I was really struggling with my eating disorder, and I just had this very strong feeling that I needed to be on my own, and I needed to do this in my own space, in my own environment, and that I would be able to really hold myself more accountable if I was living alone, which I don't know, I guess kind of sounds like the opposite, but I knew that for me, that was what was going to be best. I would say it definitely has made it more difficult at times and has caused me to feel very alone. But I know for me, having my creative outlet of sharing my story online and connecting with people has helped immensely. And this isn't to say that that's the only way to recover while living alone. You don't have to go and post about your life on social media. But I would say that a big thing that helped me to recover while living alone is consistently reminding myself that I have community and that I have support and that I have people who want to see me get better and thrive in this life. So that meant just, making plans with people and calling people and connecting with people. And like for me, like I said, one of those ways was by sharing my life on social media, but you don't need to do that. If that just means calling a family member maybe once a day, every other day, if that means trying to meet up with a friend at a cafe or going on a walk or doing something. I think just living alone obviously can feel isolating at times because there's no other people in your living space. So putting that intentional effort into making connections, meeting new people, and maybe even pushing yourself to like go to meetups and go to situations and events where you'll meet new people. Those have all been incredible things that have helped my self-confidence as well and just helped me grow my network of people that I know and my friendships and relationships. But it's also really helped me in my recovery because it kind of sometimes has helped put it into perspective that these relationships and my ability to be present in relationships is so much more important than whatever I ate earlier that day. So that is something that's really, really been helping me. And something else that I wanted to mention is finding ways to hold yourself accountable. A way that I held myself accountable was by talking about it and not allowing myself to like lie to people and cover up how I was really feeling. So I just really challenged myself to be super honest and authentic with the people in my life in order to help build and strengthen our relationship, but also to help me stay accountable and allow that friendship or that relationship to recognize whether I was in a good spot or not. And that's really scary at times because obviously that means you're being vulnerable and you're being open and you're being honest, and that you are opening yourself up to people seeing you not in the best light and not in your best moment all the time. But I found that there's so much beauty and strength in the vulnerability, and the friendships and relationships that I have where I have allowed myself to be vulnerable and open about my experience and my high moments and my low moments are so much stronger now than ever. And the last question I'm going to get to today is how to start eating more with food freedom. I would circle back to the first question I answered here and start by really recognizing what are the rules that you're living by, what are the sort of restrictions that you're living by, and really intentionally break down all of those rules. And for me personally, I had a lot of like specific fear foods, and not everyone is going to have fear foods. And if you don't experience fear foods, that doesn't mean you're not worthy of going into recovery or going through a recovery journey. Just that was part of my experience, is there were certain foods that I feared and had a much larger anxiety sort of reaction to. So a big part of food freedom for me was, intentionally eating those foods and really pushing back and proving to myself and to my brain that actually I'm okay if I eat this food, and the perceived fear was all completely in my head and not based in any truth at all. So that was a huge thing for me, and basically just kind of once I started doing that, it just kind of like opened the doors to being able to eat anything I wanted at any time of day in any type of situation, because I knew that I could eat any type of food and that there were no more rules and that I didn't need to live in this rigid, restrictive mindset anymore. And it just allowed me to have such a more open abundance mindset around food and situations with food. So I'm going to end the episode there. It got a bit longer than I was planning, but thank you so much for listening and being here. I'm just so grateful for this community, as I've said so many times, but I'm sending you all so much love, and my DMs are always open. And I hope this episode finds you well and helps you in your own recovery journey if that is where you're at in life right now. I will catch you in the next episode.